eye on it and keep going on helping it happen and making sure the right things are happening. So thank you for all of you who are involved in that. And thank you for the hearing that we just came out of.
May I?
Yeah.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
Yeah. And then before we get to your homework, I see a lot of you did some nice homework. That's great to see. A request for bill introductions. Seeing none today. That is okay. Now let's get to, we've got 3 presentations today. They're each about 20 minutes and a few minutes for questions. And also wanted to start with what we said we were going to do is just give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about your district. I saw some went above and beyond and printed some stuff, and that is awesome. I appreciate it. So I'll leave it up to whoever is ready to talk about their district. And we'll make sure everybody gets an opportunity, but whoever wants to go first, go for it. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I represent several districts because they kind of cross over. And the materials that I brought were from my Wyandotte County area, Piper School District, and a little bit of Bonner Springs. And we had a Wyandotte County delegation meeting, breakfast agenda. But for example, for Bonner Springs, each of the schools that I represent saw a very continuing funding issue, adequate and equitable funding, teacher support and recruitment, school safety. That's coming out of Bonner. And then our Piper schools, 2 different districts, Piper schools expending a lot of money as they look at expanding their buildings, growth playing out from the communities. Current year funding, special education are mentioned, and mental health support. I'm seeing this from our people. And so it's always very pleasant. I've had a chance to visit all of our schools, and also in Kansas City, Kansas last year. They were very helpful, letting me come visit a couple of things. I see so many good things in my schools, all of them. We have wonderful people who care about these kids. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else want to go next? Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I represent both Blue Valley Schools and Olathe Schools, but also Representative Poskin represents Blue Valley Schools. So I'm just going to take Olathe on my own, and she can do Blue Valley. Olathe School District is the 2nd largest school district in the state. It's the largest in the Kansas City metro with around 28,500 students. 36 elementary schools, 10 middle schools, 5 high schools, 7 specialty centers. We also have 21st century programs, CTE programs, college level courses, E-Academy. We have 92 languages spoken in Olathe. And I'll brag a little bit more, and then I'm going to tell you some challenges we have. Our graduation rate in Olathe, we're really proud, is 91.3%. And I think that, you know, a lot of people might have preconceived notions about a lot of Johnson County schools. You might think, oh, they're just so wealthy, they don't have any problems. And I think there certainly are unique challenges we face, particularly in Olathe, where I live and my children have gone since they were 3 and 4 years old. Our demographics are changing in Olathe. We have a lot, increasing number of non-English speaking students who have never even attended a K-12 school. Increased number of students eligible for free and reduced lunches, and also an overall increase in special ed population, and the severity of those needs are increasing. We have a really wide socioeconomic diversity. We have some schools who have almost 90% of their kids free and reduced, while other schools have maybe 2% free and reduced. Increasingly, we're having more and more student behaviors, including socio-emotional and traumatic behaviors, as well as physical behaviors that impact staff, like biting staff, punching staff, physically assaulted by students. And we also have some financial challenges unique to a metro area. The cost of living is really rising, so it creates challenges for staff to be able to afford to live in our district. many of them have to commute from other cities or even from Missouri. And this kind of is impacting recruitment and retention. And then when we have to pull money from the general fund to plug in special ed, and a lot of these decisions really impact our ability to give teachers raises, and that's kind of a local control decision. But if we could ease some of the challenges with funding, I think that would really make a big difference, positively impacting the classroom. We also uniquely are growing more reliant on short-term bonds to pay for our rapidly evolving technology. And so we want to start being mindful of that for the future. And I think just when I talk to people in my district, both school board and teachers and administrators, they really struggle with a lot of the decisions we make here because we talk about local control, yet we only like it when we like it. We make a lot of decisions here on the state level that I think they would like for us to trust their judgment, because the closer you are to the people, the better you know what their specific needs are in your community. So,
Thank you, appreciate that. Would anybody like to go next? Awesome. Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I went a little bit of a different route. As I've worked with some data, if you go to the KSDE or Kansas report card, you can pull up your district by just pulling the number up. And then you can go to the KSDE Data Central, and I pulled up the 2-page report that I could access all 4 of my districts. I have Central Plains, Otis Bison, Great Bend, and Hoisington. And our variety of students, we have 1,051 students at Central Plains, 2,920 students at Great Bend, and 708 students in Hoisington, and 197 students in Otis Bison. So I can pull up the exact data, I can get the demographics, their post-secondary success, the effectiveness of their post-secondary success. I can get the graduation rate, the attendance rate, chronic absenteeism, dropout, and then I can get whether that district is accredited or conditionally accredited. And then it gives me the amount that that district spends per pupil, along with the second page that it provided me was the assessment data for that district. So it was kind of it's a nice report, it's easy to read. And it also provided me with the ACT data for all of them. And I really enjoyed looking at this just for the fact that we have really small districts. Otis Bison is a small one. They also have an online school that is part of their district. So being able to compare where we are and who needs assistance and such, this was a really good site, and I wanted to share that.
Is this like a commercial for how good KSDE's website is over here? I was just gonna say.
Didn't mean for it to be, but it is a way to easily access data.
No, it's great. I appreciate it. Either one of you, representative?
Kevin Schwertfigger from the 114th District within my House district, and yes, I'd give another plug for the KSDE. I have 9 districts, USD 254, 268, 309, 310, 311, 312, 313, 332, and 382. We range from 1A classification to 4A classification. One of the items to mention that our special education needs, our funding is looking at like they need an increase from 1 to 5% on their requests. And so contacted my superintendents. There's a few that were still yet to contact me back. So got some good information going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sent a text message to building administrators in the schools in my district, and I think it's neat to note a couple different things. The Wamego School District, they had students that got to take veterans on an honor flight, and I thought that was really neat. And I asked for 3 unique qualities and 1 need. whatever it could be, what is your need? And Wamigo's need was to, they need an ability to invest in their staff and their students, and I thought that was really interesting. 383 is the Manhattan School District. They serve students due to K-State and Fort Riley from 70 countries, and they have students that speak 40 different languages. So that is a lot when you are looking at ESL for our teachers that they have to deal with, and just peer relationships and everything with a different language. And if they are really needing special education funding. Mission Valley serves 3 different communities that are bound in 4 counties, and they pride themselves on having students that are really focused in ag, and they have a lot of their student population in athletics and having academic success at the local and state level. And their need was to help be able to decrease health insurance costs by, you know, maybe looking at a statewide teacher insurance plan, Blue Cross Blue Shield. I thought it was a brilliant need, something different I didn't hear on the campaign trail. Wabunzi, which is located in Alma, they have a large portion of ag students, again, extracurriculars, and their one need would be just support for bonds, for building maintenance and improvement. And then I contacted 2 of our private schools as well. One of them, Flint Hills Christian School in Manhattan, noted that they have a transient population and that they are accredited through ACSI, and that they're the only private school that goes all the way through high school in the Flint Hills region.
Thank you. Anybody over on this side, except for Representative Hill, we're all covered over here, so. Representative Schmoy.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got 3 school districts within my House district, and I will start with the one that I still have a kiddo in, and that is Ottawa. And Ottawa has roughly 2,200 students. Their student population is decreasing. It's declining like we're seeing across the state. 60% of the student body actually qualifies for free and reduced. And it is one of the largest employers in the county. We're looking at roughly 400 employees for this one school district. I will note that they have all kinds of different pathways, technical pathways that they are concentrating on these days, everything from HVAC to CNA to electricians. They're putting in the work. They're trying to build good students to become good citizens, and so I commend them for that. West Franklin, they have an estimated 625 students comparatively, and so their student-to-teacher ratio is roughly 12-1. They actually have 24 certified staff that have their master's degree. So these are people who are genuinely continuing their education to build outstanding students. They also have partnerships with Allen County, Neosho, and Washburn. Central Heights, they have roughly 550, an estimate amount of students, and their student-to-teacher ratio is 13-1. They also do the honor flight. They make sure that they're not only investing in these kids and their education, but they are trying to instill civics and responsibility with these kids, and it's outstanding. On top of that, we have 2 private schools that have about roughly 120 kids that are enrolled in them, and then a number of homeschool students, and a good portion of those are utilizing the ability to play sports and be involved in the public schools and things like that. So they are very appreciative of the work that we've previously done. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Representative McNorton.
Yeah, I'm from North Shawnee County here. Got 3 schools. Seaman School District, which is a 6A. Have 2 smaller schools, St. Mary's and Rossville, which are all 2A small schools. Rossville is a little bit, I'm sorry, St. Mary's is a little bit different. I'm getting my cities right here. Rossville, I split the St. Mary's School District with Francis Camp, but they have a little bit unusual situation with the large sped population. They have a very large private school in that area that most of the kids, or a lot of the kids, as a matter of fact, the private school is larger than the public high school. They have a very low mill rate because they have Jeffries Energy Center in their district, so that's good for them. Silver Lake is another 2A school, small bedroom school, just 10 miles east or west of Topeka here. They struggle on money because they're almost landlocked, even though there's acres and acres of miles of farmland around Silver Lake. They will not sell the farmland to build houses on. So they struggle a little bit that way because they're landlocked. It's an older community. They are building some houses up north. They did have a new bond last year that passed to do some improvements to their sports facilities and also their school. And then Seaman, where I live at, is a 6A school. They've, doing well. All of our schools are really doing very well. They have full staff at all of them. I met with all my superintendents in December over lunch and talked to them about any needs or any assessment, concerns they have, which I was really surprised that all of them had full staffing. All of them was not the way we're reimbursing SPED is the fact that the cost of SPED is just out of control. What they're spending each year on SPED students is just skyrocketing, and and we're reimbursing them, but that's a concern that they all had is just the cost of that, especially that program. So, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Representative.
In Shawnee County.
Good.
I'll go next.
All right. Representative Wynn?
Thank you. I represent USD 500, Kansas City, Kansas. Similar to Representative Johnson, Wyandotte County has 4 school districts. And they compete for teachers, which is a challenge. But KCK has 19,000 students, has more than 70 languages spoken, about 85% free and reduced lunch. We have a top high school, Sumner Academy, many times is first in the state and in top in the nation. The programming has expanded these over the years. My graduation rate has gone up. We have a dual language program because 60% of our students are non-English speakers. That 70 languages makes sense. We are one of 3 of the larger employees in the county. We do have a Diploma Plus program where many of the students utilize the dual enrollment with the community college. And the Y partnership, great partnership with the Y, teaching kids swimming because minority students have a higher rate of drowning because they haven't had the opportunity to take swimming. There are many challenges, and that there's diversity of students, but not diversity of teachers. And they did recently pass a bond to upgrade some middle schools after the first one failed. It was just too large for the tax base in KCK. And that's, over the years, they have different standouts. I can't exactly remember what year it was, but some of our middle students had some of their projects on the space shuttle. And that was just outstanding. So there's challenges, but there's always room for growth.
And which district are you on the school board?
KCK.
KCK, 500. Awesome. Thank you for your service there. Representative Poskins, you want to go next?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Representative McDonald pointed out, I represent both Shawnee Mission School District and Blue Valley School District since wait a minute, you did Olathe. Representative Owsley is going to do Shawnee Mission. So I'm going to focus on Blue Valley School District. And if you remember the introductions at the beginning of the week, I mentioned that my blended family of 7 children spent 90 years in K through 12 classrooms, and it was 62 of those years that they spent in Blue Valley School District. So I'm very, very familiar with the school district. Just a few things by the numbers. We have about 23,000 students and about 3,500 employees. And Blue Valley does consistently rank at the top of just about any kind of metric that you would want to take a look at. 90% of our patrons say that our teachers earn an A or a B. It is ranked by Niche and Forbes as one of the top places, top employers. So it does get this reputation, as Representative McDonald pointed out. We have a 96.2% graduation rate. We rank in the top 1% of districts nationally. We've got great ACT scores, the most national merit semifinalists in Kansas. One thing, though, because that's not all of our students, that I want to point out is that within 2 years of leaving high school, 80% of our students either have earned an industry-recognized credential, they've earned a post-secondary certificate, they've earned a post-secondary degree, or they've been enrolled for 2 consecutive years in post-secondary education. So those are some of the, really great things that you get to say about Blue Valley. Again, like all school districts, we are looking at some challenges. Blue Valley students speak 102 languages. So people don't think of us as being that diverse. I forgot to say this one. This was important, that Blue Valley has the lowest operating expenditures per pupil than any other district with over 8,000 students. So they are very, very efficient with their money. One of the things that I did want to address that actually speaks to a question that Representative Estes had and a follow-up that Representative Hill had on the first day regarding per pupil funding for general education, but the 92% for special ed, and why there would be maintenance of effort if our districts are not growing and if they might actually be declining in enrollment. Blue Valley is not growing anymore because we've built out the district. Like, it has a line in all the schools, which, by the way, are 22 elementary schools, 9 middle schools, and 5 high schools. However, the percentage of special education students as a total of the enrollment continues to increase every year. And we talk a lot about the state statute that requires 92% reimbursement of special education costs. And in the 23-24 school year for Blue Valley, that percentage equated to about 62%, creating a $13.7 million shortfall in the district. And because special education services are required, they must be provided if a student has an IEP, the Blue Valley School District had to transfer the $13.7 million out of the general fund. That would have been towards the general education of our students. So again, very proud of the school district, very proud of what they accomplish and their efficiency, but we all have problems as well. And I would say that the SPED funding shortfall is one of the top. Thank you.
Representative Estes or Owsley, whoever wants to go next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not sure I'm the best representative of the school district to do this, but I have passed around one pager here. Just discusses some of the academic excellence at the Shawnee Mission School District, USD 512, and a few of the challenges. Funding like all school districts across the country, including special education. I will say that in the Appropriations and Ways and Means Committee this morning, hearing that the governor's proposed a 2-year funding for our K-12, I hope the legislature takes that into consideration and understands that it does allow districts to plan for the future and have, the strategic plans, which leads right into the next challenge listed here of staff recruitment and retention. The budget director mentioned that, you can get those contracts with the teachers out earlier. And then real-world learning. They're, like a lot of school districts, you're working with community colleges and post-secondary institutions, vocational, to work with students and post-secondary credits, and then mental health needs of students. I think we've discussed that a lot in this committee in the past, and it is still a challenge for our district. And you guys can look over the rest of the one-pager there.
Appreciate the handout. Thank you. Representative Estes?
Thank you. I was kind of going last because I kept enjoying hearing about honor flight schools. My husband and I are very, very involved in honor flight. And one of the schools in Wichita actually raises enough money, which it's gotten to be where it's close to $900 per each veteran, and they usually send about 3 a year. And they've been doing this for over 10 years. So I love hearing the honor flight involved in some of your districts. I have the tale of two cities in my district. I've got Andover 385, and I have Wichita 259. Very different situations. To begin with, scale is very different. And Andover's got 5,700 students and another 3,000 online. They were a very early adopter of online education, and I think they have really done it well, and they pull in a lot of students from around the state on their online. Wichita is huge, but not as big as it used to be. They've never fully recovered from what they lost in COVID. But they're still much larger, very similar to Representative Wynn's area. I think we're probably about the 2 largest in the state. And there is a lot of similarities between Wichita and Kansas City, that you have a lot of diversity amongst the students. We have over 125 languages spoken last time I looked, which was a while ago, so I think that number is actually higher. We also have a dual magnet. I used to teach at our dual magnet. I actually enjoyed that very much. And we have a lot of struggles, but we also have some successes. We have a couple of IB programs. Northwest in the Wichita district is highly respected, but yet at other areas we have significant challenges. And we also are, because they have two things I think played into their biggest need, which is to stabilize their financial situation, partly because they've taken a hit by the students they have not gotten back from COVID, but they also spent their COVID money on things that required a maintenance of effort. So they are consolidating school districts to handle that. So I think that's a challenge for them. Andover is, like I said, is a tale of two cities, but yet you still have children there who are going through a lot of change, but you have different set of circumstances that go along with them. Wichita is shrinking, Andover is expanding. When we moved to the Andover School District, we're not in Andover, but we're in the district. There was one high school, one middle school, and one elementary school. And now there are two high schools that look like they could be colleges all within themselves. They're so huge. Same thing with their two middle schools and their 6 middle schools. All of their schools are huge. So as a former user, I think their need is to feel like small and personal again. And I think a lot of our schools could benefit for that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Mr. Vice Chair.
Do you really want to hear about my district? I have no idea how many schools there are in my district, but I can tell you that I represent part or all of 13 school districts. And it is kind of a microcosm of Kansas as a whole. We kind of sit in the middle of Kansas. We don't have large districts there, but we don't have the super rural districts like you have way out west either. My districts range in size from the giant Abilene of 1,482 pupils, okay? And they go down to Hope White City, which is actually 2 districts that cooperate, and between the two districts, they have 281 students. So we have a wide range of sizes in our schools, but then we also have an accredited private school in my district, a Catholic school that has about 80 students. We have a private school that's non-accredited that has 8 students, and we have a lot of non-accredited, non-public schools that are homeschools. And I have no idea how many there are, but I know that there are a lot. I think something that is, and we like to talk about everything that's going right in education, and we have a lot of things that are going right in central Kansas. We just got out of a meeting talking about letters and the necessity, the absolute necessity of continuing to put the pedal to the metal on reading literacy. And many of my school districts are 100% certified in letters instructors, and I look forward to seeing improvement in assessment results on that. But I think it's easy for us to look back and say we're doing a good job on letters and we're starting to see some results. But I think we need to look forward and say numbers are our next big challenge. And just as the content-deprived teaching of reading hurt reading instruction, so has the content-deprived teaching of mathematics hurt math instruction. And so that's the next big challenge that we have. I want to finish off, I have to say this. We have a school that had 100% graduation rate. I know 91% sounds good. Who said 91%? But we have one that has 100%. And it's a lot.
Is it 28,500?
I also want to brag a little bit. My home district where I live is the only district in Kansas, that has, let me count them. As the graduates, they have a professional football player. Okay, some of you guys probably have that, right? We have a daily talk show host. Some of you may have that. The number 3 thing we have, picture hanging on the wall, not because the school is named after him, but because he graduated from there, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Thank you.
Representative Hill always has to be the best, but they save the best for last. No, just before I brag on Dodge City a little bit, I want to highlight, just the uniqueness of each of our districts. And sometimes we can get in a committee like this and we can kind of miss the forest from the trees and not see the really good details that are out there, and then have kind of the heart to say, how can we improve, how can we help? And then do our part to do that. Dodge City, USD 443, they gave me this about a week ago, but 4.3 out of 10 students are considered English learners. So there's 81% are Latin American or Hispanic. So it's a very, very large Latin population, 21 home languages, 39 countries representative. One of the unique things, migrant population, not immigrant population, but migrant population of, they'll work in Canada, come back to the States, go back to Mexico or wherever at in South America, and they'll just continue to migrate. And so that's 3 months of school somewhere, 3 months of school somewhere else, and this not just diversity of culture, but the time frame of trying to take a student in and do what you can in 3 months. So there's that kind of challenge, and some really great programs they've actually used at risk and high density at risk in our district to set up a very unique program where they hired specifically for taking kids in who have just moved to the States. They are brand new. They may not even be living with their parents, and they're living with a relative, and they're integrating them into our culture. And so they've done a really good, that's not just teach them English, let's teach them everything and help them with whatever they can. So they do it, that program is amazing. Economically disadvantaged, 83% eligible for free and reduced lunch. The two things that I wanted to share are our district, they have some beautiful buildings, and sometimes I used to kind of give them grief in my mind about it a little bit. But one thing that they did, and I'm glad that they have great facilities, but one thing that they did, they paid off a bond 7 years early. And they just reduced the mill rate 9 mills in our local community, saving the taxpayer thousands of dollars. And so I wanted to, they could have held on to that. That is actually a choice, and sometimes it's coached by a loan company wants you to keep that loan on the books. They like the interest. They don't like it paid off. But having a paid off car is a little different. Having a paid off house is a lot different. And so our taxpayers got that advantage because our local leadership said, we voted on this bond for this purpose, and once it was done, we needed to pay it off if we could. So I really appreciated hearing that from them. And then the other thing, probably the thing that they gave me a very specific sheet on it and said, hey, we need to do something about fixing Capers 3. I didn't hear about that from anybody else, so I guess I am the best. They said, let's do something about fixing Capers 3. So I've talked to Chairman Hoheisel. It is on the books to be looked at, and they are working on that. They have a couple different solutions, and that will run this session. We'll see how far it gets, but I do that, and I know it takes some committee time. But I think this humanizes it a little bit more, and that's important to me. And I think it's really important when then we talk about funding that it's not just this generic big budget. It's funding very specific and beautiful things. So thank you all for doing your homework. You all did great. You all get an A+++, and I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'd just like to draw your attention to the funding paragraph on the Shawnee Mission School District handout that does mention Capers retirement.
You get a 4+.
Great inflation, great inflation.
Thank you all. Now, we need to do a little bit of review before we dive into next week when we're going to, and we've got an introduction. We've got some KSDE members that last time we had committee, we had some come up and say hi. I see Timothy Graham as well. Would you guys, it's first week, we're getting started. Would love for all of you to just introduce yourself, say hi. I think we're gonna see a lot of each other. And kind of the phrase was, before you're a proponent or an opponent, we're on the same team. So would love to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity. I'll make it quick. Tim Graham, I work for KNEA. We are the teachers union in Kansas. We represent about 22,000 teachers as members, and we represent all the teachers in their bargaining contracts every year when they're bargaining their salaries. Congratulations on everybody returning. I would love to say I'm excited that you're back. That would be probably a stretch at this moment, because just a joke. I am excited to work with all of you as I get to know the new ones.
You really do love your job, huh?
Yeah. Those of you that see me up here hopefully know I was joking there, but anyways, am excited to work with you. I guess if I'm excited that you're here, we'll wait and see, right? But again, joking, but I am very excited to work with you guys. I've met a lot of you, and I'll get around to meet more of you as the year goes on. And I appreciate your approach to the start of the session. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Dr. Har, I'm eyeballing some people back there. Who's gonna budge? You can introduce your staff if they don't want to, or they can come up and introduce themselves as well.
conversation with the chairman about how we can help present our budget, again, because it's big and complex, and we want you to have the best information you can to make those, to make decisions you have to make. And so with me, do you want to introduce yourself? There you go. And we'll see if John.
Thank you, committee. My name is Gabrielle Hull. I'm the legislative coordinator for KSDE. I was actually with KLRD before my time with KSDE, so I had the privilege of staffing this committee. And I am very fortunate to be the daughter of a public school teacher. So very fortunate to be working with each of you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is John Hess. I'm the Director of Fiscal Services and Operations for the Kansas State Department of Education, so basically the Chief Budget Officer for the department. And I've been in that role since June of 2020, and before that, I also worked for KLRD and staffed this committee for 3 years.
So KSDE is robbing KLRD pretty consistently over here. Huh. Okay, now I haven't left Nick and Jennifer that maybe they're full allotted time, but we did talk about like 20 minutes each and on each of these presentations. We may let them present. They've got we kind of got three different sections we're going to go through. I'll let Mr. Myers come up and do a little bit of review and maybe a few questions at the end, and then Ms. Light will go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, I've got a PowerPoint presentation, and I believe it's been emailed to you. I don't have copies. It was 40 pages with double PowerPoint slides on it. So I would be happy to get you a copy. I believe it's in your email inbox, and we've also got a version to put up online. But I'm going to be skipping through it a lot real fast. So really, it's going to be a resource for you if you want to refer and just kind of see what the Gannon litigation was about, what this decision kind of was based on, or what the legislature did in response to that decision. So as you recall, when I presented to you on Tuesday, Article 6, Section 6B requires suitable provision for finance, and it requires the legislature to provide suitable provision for finance. Thank you. So, and I stated that what does suitable provision mean? That means both adequate and equitable financing. So let me just start real fast. So Article 6, Section 6B is where we get that provision. School finance isn't a new topic in Kansas.
And some of you are saying that you don't have the email. At least we have it in front of you, and if it didn't get sent out, we'll get it to you. This first week, you've got it. Representative Poskins does have it. Okay. Jennifer's going to send. It was sent to. It was sent from Ms. Light. So we got it. All right, we're good to go. If you want to check your email and you want to scroll along on your computer.
And for members of the public, we'll be sure to get it up onto the website. And okay, and it might be up on the website already, or is it on the website? Okay, so it should be available on the website to members of the public as well. So, committee, real fast, school finance isn't a new topic in Kansas. You can see on this slide that there's been various school finance topics and cases throughout the history of Kansas. And as I said on Tuesday, they really started with equal protection-based lawsuits, and then they kind of, as school finance litigation progressed in the states, they morphed into specific constitutional education article of the state constitution arguing basically adequacy and equity in school finance formulas. So with Gannon started in 2010. Plaintiffs brought a lawsuit against the school finance formula in 2010. And I'm not going to go through what the district court held. The district court ultimately held the finance formula unconstitutional. And then through statute, that went directly up to the Supreme Court to evaluate whether the school finance formula was constitutional. So we had Gannon versus State number 1. And there's, we do have a slide on the Rose capacities, Representative Hill, so you can see those, and that'll lead us into Gannon v. State 1. Let's see. I don't have my adequacy equity. Oh, there we go. So again, adequacy, equity. In Gannon 1, that's where the court established. The court took the district court panel's decision and evaluated whether the school finance formula was constitutional. And the court in Gannon 1 put forth these two tests to determine whether the finance formula is constitutional. They didn't rule on it. They didn't actually take that into account. I'm going to skip ahead, way ahead in here to slide 32. Some stuff happened. The court,
Yeah, some stuff did happen.
some stuff happened. So the court put forth those brand new tests. And then they sent that back down to the district court panel to evaluate using those tests to evaluate the school finance system. And we had some equity decisions. The court at one time bifurcated both adequacy and equity, and the Supreme Court dealt with a couple of equity matters regarding the school finance equalization formulas. And so those were Gannon 2 and Gannon 3 were dealing with equity. And then that brings us to Gannon 4 on slide 32. And it might not even be worth flipping through these slides up here. So in Gannon 4 is where we got the first iteration of the Supreme Court actually applying the adequacy test to the school finance system. The Supreme Court in Gannon 4 was looking at, if you recall, there may have been, some of you were here in the State House, but the legislature passed at that time what was known as the block grants bill, Senate Bill 7. So for 2 years, the legislature was going to provide the same amount of funding over 2 years in a form of block grants. And so in Gannon 4, the Supreme Court was looking at this block grants finance formula to evaluate whether the school finance system was adequate. So when the Supreme Court applied that test, they were applying it to that class act, the block grants, and the Supreme Court said that formula is not constitutional. And what the Supreme Court said in this Gannon 4 decision is that to evaluate whether a school finance formula is adequate, you have to look at both the structure and implementation. If you remember in my spiel about adequacy, you're evaluating through both structure and implementation whether the school finance formula is reasonably calculated to have all students meet or exceed those Rose capacities. So with structure, with the structure component, and the Supreme Court evaluated both, they held that the Class Act does not meet the structure component. So there's a little caveat right there in relation to this, our sunset date on our KISA school finance formula. This block grants bill, which was only 2 years of funding, did not meet the structure component of the adequacy test. They said that the Class Act does not profess to be a school finance formula. That's essentially that 2 years of block grants is not a finance formula. It's not responsive to changing student conditions, and it's not responsive to enrollment. So the Supreme Court took that into account and said the structure fails with a block grants system. The next thing the court looked at was implementation. So how is this formula being implemented? So first they looked at, and for implementation, they're looking at both the inputs and the outputs. So the inputs, funding, that's an input to the school finance. Now the Supreme Court said total spending isn't a touchstone for exactly how to determine adequacy, but they did say it is important, and it remains valid. They're looking at the sources of funding. And the Supreme Court noted that all funding sources should be considered: CAPERS, local option budget funds, federal funds. So the Supreme Court did mention that you should look at all sources of funding. Then they also, in the input section, looked at funding impacts. And they what the Supreme Court found was that that the reductions in funding led to reductions in programs in schools, and that those equated to reductions in outputs. So then we get to the outputs. And the Supreme Court, had some statements about those inputs, but then we get to an evaluation of the outputs. So for outputs, what was the Supreme Court looking at? And a lot of you on this committee have seen this in some of my memos in the past, but they were looking at state assessment results. They were looking at state assessment scores. They were looking at ELA math results, science results, and they were also looking at NAEP ACT, graduation rates, all that evidence was presented to the Supreme Court by the plaintiffs. And what the Supreme Court said is that it generally showed, that evidence generally showed that there was declining proficiency across all students and across student subgroups, and that achievement gaps amongst student subgroups were persisting and essentially getting worse in some cases. So they, in Gannon 4, found that the evidence showed that through both the structure and its implementation, because of the achievement gaps, the academic deficiencies in the subgroup achievement, that the state was failing to provide approximately 1/4 of all its public school K-12 students the basic skills of both reading and math, and it's also leaving behind significant groups of harder to educate students. So after Gannon 4, remember that was Class Act Block Grants Bill. After Gannon 4, that's when the legislature came back and enacted the school finance formula that you have today, the KESA, the Kansas School Equity and Enhancement Act. This is a weighted system. Jenny's got a memo on this in front of you. It's a weighted school finance system. It's based on enrollment. It's weighted. You're multiplying enrollment and weightings and by the base aid, and it's responsive to the school enrollment and the population, the demographics of students. When the legislature first enacted the KESA, they enacted a new base aid amount and provided an increase over 2 years of base aid. And also some targeted funding provisions within the KESA enactment in 2017. So there's some slides about what the KESA included. For example, the at-risk weighting was bumped up from 0.456 to 0.484, and there were some other targeted funding amounts that were put in, and then some accountability provisions that were put into the KESA upon its first enactment. So then it became an evaluation of, is the KESA constitutional? Well, the court, again, evaluated the KESA. This is the Supreme Court. They evaluated the school finance system, and they said, again, that the structure is fine. There's not a problem with the structure component. But the implementation component, the court in Gannon 5 said that the legislature didn't demonstrate how the system is reasonably calculated to meet the Rose capacities. And the court also noted there were some arguments put forth. The court also noted that the bill that enacted the KESA was an outlier, and that there were other calculations in the record that were considerable, other monetary calculations of the increase that should be provided to education was an outlier compared to what the legislature provided. And so the legislature didn't show its work. The amount of funding that was provided was an outlier compared to some of these amounts you see on this slide that were put forth in the record. So the Supreme Court ruled the finance formula unconstitutional, continuing to stay unconstitutional in Gannon 5. After Gannon 5, the legislature worked to bring the school finance formula into constitutional compliance. So here's where we get, and in statute, you can see 5 years of base aid increases that were occurring. And through this plan in 2018 that was formulated by the legislature to provide 5 years of base aid increases, those 5 years of increases came from the Montoy Safe Harbor Plan. The Montoy Safe Harbor Plan was essentially a method to say, what were we financing back when the school finance formula was constitutional after the Montoy decision was dismissed? And let's carry that amount forward for inflation. So there was a memo that was produced to show and produce that amount and carry forward that amount of what was funded constitutionally after Montoy, carry that forward for inflation up to the 2016-2017 school year, and then provide that through 5 years of base aid increases to the school districts. And in every iteration that the legislature every bill that they were passing, that they were also providing targeted funding too. And I want to mention after Gannon 5 in these bills that the legislature passed, there was targeted funding for special education, ACT and work keys, mentor teacher programs, mental health pilot programs, and preschool at-risk programs as well. So in Gannon 6, the court then said, okay, let's look at that Montoy Safe Harbor plan. Let's look at that 5 years of funding and the plan you're presenting is Montoy Safe Harbor. And the court in Gannon 6, so here's our bills leading up to Gannon 6, and there's what the Montoy Safe Harbor plan memo looked like, and you can see this on slide 60, carrying an inflation amount forward and determining the amount of funding that needed to be provided. There's the base aid amounts that were put into statute to increase the base over the next 5 years. So in Gannon 6, the court evaluated that plan. And really what the court said in Gannon 6 is that plan, yes, it works. We think that plan works. It just fails to completely execute that inflation increase. And the court said that with some financial adjustments and by completing the plan, the state can bring the K-12 system into constitutional compliance. And the court noted that, as I mentioned, that plan went through 2016, 2017 school year for inflation increases. Well, the court said you didn't include, because this is now 2018 right now, when the court's decision came out, and we're already in the school year 2017, 2018, and the court dinged the legislature on that and said, hey, you didn't include inflation for 2017-18 or 2018-19 school years. So they said further inflation adjustment is necessary. And then in this decision, the court recognized, this is the decision where the court recognized those targeted funding increases that the legislature was doing in addition and in compilation with the base aid increases. And they recognized the legislature's work to increase at-risk, to change high-density at-risk weighting, to apply a building level calculation, to make those mandatory LOB at-risk and bilingual transfers into the funds to get more money into at-risk and bilingual. They recognize the legislature's work to go to all-day kindergarten and provide funding for that, and then provide funding for preschool at-risk and ACT programs and work keys assessments. So after Gannon 6, the court said we need to add more inflation. After Gannon 6, the legislature then increased those. They had 4 more years of base aid increases in that session to do this inflation increase, and the legislature did. They increased the remaining. See if I can get to that slide. So they increased the last 4 years of base aid increases that were in statute by an inflation amount. Approximately $90 million was added to the base aid amounts in each of the remaining 4 years through the bill that the legislature passed. And then afterwards, after that 5 years of base aid increases, and you all are aware of this, the statute also provides for that CPIU, 3-year CPIU average inflation adjustment moving forward. And the court, so that's where we're at. The legislature provided those extra increases. Then we get to Gannon 7, where the court evaluated the legislature's work there. And finally, in Gannon 7, the court held that through the legislature's additional funding of its Montoy Safe Harbor plan, the state has substantially complied with the mandate that they set forth from the last Gannon decision. It did note, it said at this decision that the legislature has protected the total money, both old and new, that we identified in Gannon 6 from being devalued by inflation. And then also in this decision, the court retained jurisdiction because this decision was in 2019. So there was still a few more years of those base aid increases that were going to be happening up to 22, 23. The court retained jurisdiction to continue, in the court's words, to ensure continued implementation of the scheduled funding. So, and that brings us, and I think last year I was presenting to you all, and we were still under the jurisdiction of the court. But then in February, on February 6th of 2024, the Supreme Court actually dismissed the Gannon case. And I just wanted to note that on this slide, the final slide here, just some kind of, in their dismissal order, the court noted that the purpose of retaining jurisdiction was to ensure implementation of that phased-in funding and they noted that the phased-in funding had occurred. And then you had one justice in this order. They said it was a divided court, and they did note that Justice Rosen dissented and would have continued to retain jurisdiction given the history of school finance, is what the order said. So the Gannon case is dismissed. I will note that in the 22-23 school year, the legislature financed that final year, the 5-year phased-in funding increase. And then in 23-24 last year, and then in this year again, the legislature has provided that 3-year CPIU increase to the base aid, and the court recognized that as well. And Mr. Chair, that's real fast for a lot of Gannon, but
that was real fast and a lot of Gannons. I'm gonna save questions. We can talk to him at any point, but I just want to make a comment on this, and then let Ms. Light have her space in this final 30 minutes. How many years were we in that?
well, I mean, if you're counting the dismissal, that's started up in 2010 with the district court when the first filing was made, and then it was dismissed in 2024, so 14 years.
14 years. How expensive is it to go to court?
That's not my bailiwick, so.
Anybody in here who has been to court, is that a peaceful thing to go do? Like sitting in front of a judge, like being by a lawyer? That might be some lawyers. I see some people shaking their head because it's not fun. I didn't get to live, I didn't have to live all that. Last year we got released out of that because some people made some different decisions and we've moved in a different direction. I would like to keep moving in that direction to where not just to be scared of the courts. I'm not scared of the courts, but I don't want to waste the taxpayers' dollars that could go to education and roads and water and stuff that is important to our citizens instead of funneling it through the judicial branch. They have a job to do, but there's some things that, if done right, they don't have to be involved. So, as we go forward over the next couple of years, a big reason that I think this is an important thing to keep in your mind as we look at the school finance formula sunsetting or expiring, and we've got to approve a new one before 2027 when it expires. So next session. I just want us to 14, 15 years of a lot of emotional energy, a lot of financial resources, and I'm not a genius, but that I don't think we need to do that again as a state on multiple parts. And that's about all I'll say about it at this point. And if you have any other comments or would like to say anything to me, I just want to keep the meeting moving, but that's where I'm at with it. If you've got some other comments, you want to have a conversation with me, great. That's where I'm at with it today. So, Nick, thank you very much. And Ms. Light.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Light, and I just want to point out I'd have happily ceded all my time to Nick to answer all those questions. With the chair's permission, I'm going to switch the order we're doing this in. I just want to touch on the budget basics briefly because we are going to be going into the budgets next week.
Will you just let us know which handout you're working off of?
Well, the handout that we're looking at is the smaller of the two white handouts with KLRD at the top. It says budget basics.
Budget basics, okay.
To be fair, I'm not actually going to read this document for you. It kind of walks through the different funding and expenditures categories you will be seeing in the documents over the next couple weeks. What I do want to just kind of walk through with you, because the education budget has been different than the standard budget process for the last couple of years. I just want to walk through the process of how the budget will hopefully be going this year, as far as this year has been a very different one as well. So even though I say this is the standard way of doing it, the budget process this year is a little bit in flux as well. So as changes happen, we will continue to make sure that you're aware of them.
Let's announce that, because before I forget, about next week, we are able to get you the proposal budgets for KSDE, School of the Blind, School of the Deaf. And not until Tuesday, I believe that you said, could we get the rest of the review from Budget Committee and the governors?
So, Mr. Chair, I am prepping to send out a document to the committee today, which has what was presented to the special committee on the legislative budget. It has the agency's request in it. That is the KLE document that was done for the November and December meetings. The document that we will be using next week and the week after for the three different agencies will include the legislative budget committees, the interim committees' recommendations. That document does not include the governor's recommendations. We will have additional supporting information on that, and we will, of course, have the agencies be discussing that as well. But that is not in the current versions of the documents going forward for this year. It is instead, if you, could you pull up did you get my email? I'm going to have him pull up what the one that was sent to the LBC, or what sent not to the LBC, to the Special Committee on Legislative Budget. We like saying legislative budget a lot.
Yes. Just trying to get you prepped of what you can look at this weekend and know what she's going to send you, because we won't have the complete until Tuesday. That's when they can release all of them, but we can get what we have and what we have permission to release to you. That will be sent to you today, to where you can look at School of the Deaf, School of the Blind, and some of KSDE, but we'll be looking over and making recommendations for School of the Deaf, School of the Blind next week, so you can be prepared to do that, and she'll help you get prepped for those who are new. There we go.
I'm going to go ahead and talk. The top part of this document you'll see has a table, and in that table it has the columns for last year's actuals. It has the agency's request for 25, and then the agency's request for 26. In between, you'll see some blank spaces. That's where the legislative committees and the interim committees' recommendations will go. So in the documents you received today, you will see some blank columns. Those will be what is filled in on Tuesday when I'm able to, and on Tuesday, as soon as we have those ready to go, we'll have them sent out. It's just been a very quick turnaround, so I apologize for the fact, but we wanted to get you what we could so that you'd be able to see something over the weekend if you wanted to look at the budgets. So this will be just the agency recommendation to give you a high-level overview. The interim committee basically said that they were removing the supplements and enhancements, which have their own section. And then there is discussion about new FTEs that was removed. And then there are some reappropriations that were removed. And there are some in the Department of Education for sure, and I can't speak specifically to the School for the Blind, School for the Deaf, but if you want a high-level overview what the differences are going to be, that's the majority of the differences. You will, of course, be able to take a look at the agency request. That's everything that they asked for, and then in the documents that are released on Tuesday to you, you'll be able to, and as we do the presentations, you'll see what the legislative committee had recommended, and the agencies will be coming up and talking about GovRec as well. So.
And then in fairness to you, if you don't feel like you have time to get through both of these and you want to pick one, that is okay. But if you feel like you have time, you do what you feel like you have time for.
Let's get through the budget part first. Just as a quick overview, I think that's going to be a 5-minute sort of thing here. But basically, the committee or the agencies give their budgets to the legislature and they give their agencies to the governor, and KLRD gets a copy of the agency request in September. Then this year, there was an interim committee on the legislative budget that listened to the agency requests in November and December and made recommendations, which is what came out in House Bill 2007 as the legislative-led budget. The governor worked with the agencies as well and did the governor's budget That was presented to the Joint Committee of House Appropriations and Senate Ways and Means today. That, to my understanding, that bill will also be introduced here shortly. Then what happens is that the budget committees get to hear about the different agencies and go in depth into the budgets, ask questions of KLRD staff, the revisers, and the state agencies as to what is going on and what they need the money for. After the budget committees hear the budget, they do recommendations, and that is when the motions come in for changing of the budget from any of you. Nick or myself, but mostly Nick, will be drafting a lot of the changes. If you need a dollar amount, happy to work with you on that to make sure it's correct. But Nick usually drafts any sort of motions to change the budget. After the recommendations happen, there's a motion to pass it to the House Appropriations. You will get a subcommittee report from me which outlines all the changes that have happened, which you will go ahead and approve by email. If you do not approve of it, you'll have the opportunity to state as such, and I'll work through all that with you as we get to that point. Once it goes to House Appropriations, the chairman will go ahead and explain what the committee has done. House Appropriations also gets a chance to go ahead and make motions and change the budget even further. They listen to every single budget as a report out, is the way we refer to it. It's the report out time to the House Appropriations. Once they've heard all the budgets, they put it all back together. They can hear more motions at that point to change the budget. It'll go from there to the House floor. The House floor, everybody gets a chance to vote again. There's also a chance at that point to go ahead and make motions on the floor. Once it is done there, in the past, this is run concurrently in the Senate and the House at the same time. So each chamber has been doing this with their budget committees and then moving along the process. I cannot speak as to how exactly this process is going to work from there this year, but that's the initial section of how generally a budget works through the budget committees to get to the floor. So I just wanted to give you a quick update on that because I know there are new members here, and I know that the K-12 budget has not been historically for the last several years as part of the main budget bill, which has caused, just thought it would be helpful to have this refresher.
And then at the very end of that, the conference committee, to where
Yes,
there are other changes.
There are a conference committee
happen.
for the differences that happen between the Senate and the House, and then they conference, and then there's a vote on the final version.
So keep up with it as we go through. I know this is important to all of us of how this goes. It will come out of here. Keep up with it. You have a couple representatives on appropriations. Be talking with us and continue in the process. And that is the way it's going to run this year and probably next year, but I can speak for this year. And so it's a little different than we've done over the last couple of years. And it's different for me. So I'm trying to take my time and do it a different way, the right way, however that is, and look for that path. So be in communication with me if there's something that, as we're voting it out, as I'm reporting it, as appropriations readdresses it, and conference committee and floor, all those, let's just stay on it, and let's try and make it right this year. Okay? Thank you, Jennifer. Representative Bowsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer, do you recall if the Special Committee on Legislative Budget proposal or recommendation that came out of there had the K-12 budget as a 2-year base state aid proposal? I don't recall that. I remember the sweeping, if you will, of the reappropriations and the FTE deletions, but I don't recall.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Representative. That brings me to a different part that is part of this process. There's a consensus revenue estimates that happens twice a year, in the spring and in the fall, and KSDE, Division of Budget, and KLRD sit down and do estimates and revise estimates for each school year. The caseloads for education and human services were accepted by the interim committee, and so those, which does include state foundation aid, supplemental state aid, and special education state aid for fiscal year 2027, which I believe is the same as in the governor's recommendation, but I'd have to double check since that came out today. I would hesitate to say for certain that that is the entirety of what the governor is recommending, but I do know that that is caseloads when we talk about recommendations for, and we also cover the rest of the school finance formula in caseloads for adjustments.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the Blueprint for Literacy covered under the KBOR budget? It's not K-12, correct?
Mr. Chair, the $10 million appropriation that happened last year for the Blueprint for Literacy is completely under KBOR.
That's what I thought. Okay,
So
thank you.
there is not funding for the Blueprint for Literacy within the KSDE budget. I don't think I have time to go through the entirety of the school finance formula, but what I can say is that there are several portions to it. The memo is long and thorough, and I'm always happy to talk to each of you about any parts of it. The caseload, the fall estimate for the caseloads is out. I will also make sure that that gets to the committee. It is also a very numbers heavy document, so if you want to talk about the differences, happy to do so.
I'll jump in for a second. The good thing is we're not going to rush next week, or the week after that. I'm going to meet with Dr. Harwood and his team on Tuesday to make a plan for the large KSDE budget and their recommendations that they will present to us over a full week, and we'll get to look at that slowly, methodically. And I think even next week, if you want to take a little bit of time when we have other things, if there's this presentation that we didn't quite get to, I think we'll continue to learn. We've probably had enough information for today to kind of digest and take it with us. And we look forward to your emails on the budgets that we can look at. And a heads up, and we'll give you a heads up Tuesday when we're back, Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday, so we won't be here then. Be looking at your email early if you want to see the complete version of, are we doing School of the Deaf or School of the Blind first? I forget.
I believe it's School for the Deaf.
School for the Deaf. So that will be a budget that you might want to look at right away in the morning because they'll be here that afternoon at 3:30. So I know in your free time, you got a little document to read. This budget isn't as big, and to look through it, 30 minutes, you can get quite a ways and bring some questions, bring some thoughts and insight, and we will go from there. Yes, Representative Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Different committees do different things. So will information always be coming from email or on the drive? Where can we expect that?
I like the drive, but I don't know that we're trying to figure out who has access to the drive in our office, if we can upload or if we have to send that to somebody. So if whoever that is, we will work that out. And until we have the drive set up, we're going to email you.
Okay. So budgets, everything will come from her email.
Unless Rose sends it out.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So when we're talking, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we're talking about emails and the drive, we just need to stay cognizant of the Kansas Open Records Act. So anything that's going out on the drive that the committee is in the possession of this body is a public record. So we just need to make sure to be cognizant that those records should be uploaded online, or if there is a request for that record, that we should produce that for whoever is requesting that item. Thank you.
Yes. Ms. Light, do you have a comment on that?
I was just going to say that the copy of the budgets that are going to go out to the members today will also go to Rose to be uploaded for testimony today. So,
Representative Poskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by saying how much I appreciate your perspective on the lawsuit and how we don't want to be there again. I do have a question for Revisor Myers about any other states where the Supreme Court has retained jurisdiction. If you're familiar with that, I did a quick Google and I only saw Washington as another state where the Supreme Court had to retain jurisdiction to make sure that the plans were implemented and that funding remained constitutional. Are you aware of any others?
I am not. I haven't looked into that question for other state litigation for a while, but I'm not aware of that specific issue at all.
All right, thank you. Thank you, appreciate it.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you. I have just one quick question. Nick, when was the first year that we constitutionally funded our schools? Just, I want to make sure I have that.
So the end of the 5 years of base aid increases occurred in 2022, 2023. And then that CPIU adjustment started kicking in thereafter. And I will note that in Gannon 7, that's when the court said that the scheduled funding for that Montoy Safe Harbor plan was in substantial compliance with the court's prior order. And that's, so 2022, 23 was when that 5-year funding was last.
So if I understand that, answer that question, it took the full 5 years of doing it to get the completion point to where they would say that's the full funding. I have a doctor nodding his head in the audience. Not a lawyer. Thank you.
I think there's going to be some differences of opinion on that, but 22, 23 was the end of the 5-year phased-in funding amounts, and then you kicked into CPIU.
We don't know anything about differences of opinion here. I don't know what you're talking about. All right. Unless there's anything else for the good of the committee, I thank you for your time and your effort, and we are adjourned.